Everybody's talking about The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, the game that just came out not too long ago. One of the best entries in the entire series, depending on who you ask. There are a handful of people who say that Tears of the Kingdom is way more difficult than Breath of the Wild. But at the same time, there's some who will stand by the statement that Breath of the Wild is probably the best Zelda game that they've played in a very long time. But everybody has their own respective opinion on what the greatest Zelda game of all time is. And such is the case with Ocarina of Time, a game that came out back in 1998 for the N64. And the thing about this game is that a lot of people thought it was revolutionary because it was one of the first like major Zelda games to include time travel. It was a very challenging game, especially for those who played like past the water temple level in that game. A lot of people slammed their controllers, thought it was ridiculous, and Nintendo, did that on purpose to torture them or what have you. But despite all that, Ocarina of Time was an amazing game. It's a game that stands the test of time to this day. It was a huge success back in the late '90s when it came out because I think it did almost 10 mil in terms of no. I think it did almost like 8 mil in terms of sales, and then for the most part, it was eventually remade for the Nintendo 3DS back in the early teens, but since then, I don't think anything's really been done with it. And I honestly feel that a lot of people thought that Nintendo probably should have did something big with Ocarina of Time this year because I think this year would have marked like the 25th anniversary of Ocarina of Time because the game came out back in '98. So yeah, I think this year would mark like the 25th anniversary of that. But the thing is, you can't have a remake of Ocarina of Time, and then you got Tears of the Kingdom coming out. And the thing is, it doesn't seem like Nintendo is going to do another remake of Ocarina of Time, probably because it's really old, and a lot of people feel like for the most part Nintendo has no need or no reason to remake that game because Nintendo is trying to get people to focus on their more recent installments and they're trying to push forward in relation to the Zelda games. And like for the most part, Nintendo doesn't remake too many games. They like to like press forward and the same thing is the case with like the older Mario games. There's no classic Mario games that they have remade like Super Mario World, the two Super Mario Land games from the early '90s. I mean, hell, they haven't even remade a Super Mario Galaxy 2 yet. I think they they did a Super Mario 3D All Stars collection not too long ago. I think it was like over a year ago, and I think that included Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxy and something else. But for the most part, Nintendo's not too big on remakes. And honestly, I feel like the chances of Nintendo remaking Ocarina of Time are very slim because I feel like if they were going to do that for the Switch console, they would have done so by now. And honestly, I do feel that if Nintendo did remake Ocarina of Time for the Switch console or their next generation console, it would be a huge attraction. It would turn heads and people would be ecstatic about it. But the thing is, I think at this point, Ocarina of Time in some people's minds is overrated. I mean, it's a great game, but some people make it out to be like the greatest Zelda game of all time, and that's something that's highly debatable. But for the most part, I do feel that Ocarina of Time is one of those games that's kind of it's better off left in the past because if Nintendo does a remake of the game and it falls below people's desired expectations, it would probably just ruin the mystique of the game itself. And honestly, I do feel that in terms of like, top maybe top five or top 10 greatest Zelda games of all time, Ocarina of Time is always going to be a part of that list. Probably in like the top 10. I know Ocarina of Time is going to be in some people's top five, but for the most part, I don't expect Nintendo to go back and remake titles like Ocarina of Time or Link to the Past or I don't think even like Wind Waker has been remade yet either. Those are all games that are kind of left in the past, unless I guess the demand from the online gaming community is strong enough and they push for it and Nintendo gives in and decides to do it anyways. But until that happens, I really don't see Nintendo remaking Ocarina of Time anytime in the near future.